The great council chamber stretched out like a massive cave made of metal and glass. Thousands of seats rose up in circles, each one filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Some had fur, others had tentacles, and many had features that humans could barely understand. But at the center of it all, on the highest platform, sat the Saurians. They looked like giant lizards that had learned to walk on two legs. Their scales shined under the bright lights, some green, some brown, others a deep bronze color. Sharp teeth filled their mouths, and their yellow eyes missed nothing. They had ruled this council for 3,000 years, and everyone knew it. Katie. Rodriguez walked slowly across the smooth floor toward the speaking platform. Her simple black suit looked very plain next to all the strange clothes and natural coverings of the other species. She carried a small bag with Earth's request papers inside. Behind her, 2 other humans followed, but they stayed quiet and let her do the talking. The noise in the chamber was terrible. Clicks, hisses, chirps, and sounds that had no names mixed together. But when Katie reached the platform, everything went silent. Every eye, tentacle, and sensor turned to look at the small human woman standing alone in the center of the vast room. High Commander Vrexthal rose from his golden seat. He was huge, even for a Saurian, with scars covering his bronze scales like a map of old battles. His claws clicked against the metal as he gripped the rail in front of him. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "So the mammals from the small blue world think they deserve a place among us," he said. His words echoed through the chamber. "Tell us, little human, what makes your species worthy of joining the Galactic Council?" Katie had practiced this speech 100 times during the long trip from Earth. She knew the facts and numbers by heart. Earth's population, their technology level, their recent discoveries in space travel. But standing here, surrounded by beings who had conquered star systems before humans learned to make fire, the words felt very small. "We come in peace," she began, her voice clear but tiny in the huge space. "Humanity has developed faster than light, travel. We have colonies on 12 worlds. Our population is growing, and we want to trade and learn from other species." A low hissing sound came from the Saurian section. It was not a good sound. Captain Siktar, Vrexthal's second in command, stood up. His green scales rippled as he moved and his tail swished behind him with anger. "Trade? Learn?" Siktar's voice was sharper than his commander's. "Every species that sits in this council earned their place with blood and honor. The Vorthan conquered the spiral arm in 3 years. The Kristek bent light itself to their will. The Nexari built engines that could crack planets." He pointed one clawed finger at Katie. "What have your humans done except crawl from one small rock to a few other small rocks? Where are your great victories? Where are your mighty warriors?" Katie felt her heart beating fast, but she kept her voice steady. "We believe strength comes in many forms. We have ended wars on our world. We have cured diseases that killed millions. We have created art and music and stories that bring joy to billions of people." The hissing got louder. Some of the other species joined in with their own sounds of disapproval. The Saurians were the strongest military force in the galaxy, and they had made it clear that only the strong deserved respect. Vrexthal raised one massive hand and the chamber went quiet again. He looked down at Katie with those yellow eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Pretty words," he said slowly. "But words do not stop plasma cannons. Words do not protect colonies from raiders. Words do not earn respect in a galaxy where the weak are eaten by the strong." He stood up to his full height, nearly 8 feet of muscle and scales and sharp edges. "There is only one way to earn a seat on this council, the same way it has been done for 3,000 years. Single combat. One of your champions against one of ours. If your warrior wins, humanity gets a seat. If your warrior loses," he did not need to finish. Everyone knew what happened to species whose champions lost. Their request was denied and they were forbidden from asking again for 50 years. Most never got a second chance. Katie's throat felt dry. Earth's leaders had known this might happen, but they had hoped things might be different. The humans had no great warriors like the Saurians. Their military was small and mostly used for keeping peace, not for conquest. "We accept," she said. The words came out before she could stop them. Around the chamber, creatures leaned forward in their seats. Some looked excited, others looked sorry for the humans. The Saurians looked pleased, like hunters who had just found easy prey. "Good," Rexthal said, showing his sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. "You have 30 days to bring your champion to Kepler's Rest. The combat will be held in the Grand Arena, watched by representatives from across the galaxy. Choose your warrior well, human. He will be fighting for more than just a seat in this chamber. He will be fighting for your species' future among the stars." Katie nodded, though her hands were shaking slightly. As she walked back across the chamber floor, she could hear the excited chatter starting up behind her. Bets were already being made. Most of them were about how quickly the human champion would fall. She reached her two companions, who looked as worried as she felt. They had to send word back to Earth immediately. Somewhere on their homeworld, they needed to find someone willing to face the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Someone who could do the impossible. The problem was, Katie had no idea who that someone might be. 28 days had passed since Katie Rodriguez returned to Earth with the news. The whole world had been talking about it. Every news channel, every website, every conversation seemed to be about the same thing. Who would represent humanity in the fight that could change everything? The military had said no right away. General Parker, the head of Earth's Space Defense Force, had been very clear about it. "This is not what our soldiers are trained for," he had said during the emergency meeting. "We fight to protect people, not to prove how tough we are in some alien arena." The Olympic Committee had offered their best athletes. Professional fighters had volunteered. Scientists had suggested sending someone in powered armor. But everyone who knew about the Saurians said the same thing. No human could match their strength, speed, or natural weapons. It seemed hopeless. Then, 3 days before the deadline, something strange happened. A message came to the United Nations building in New York. It was not from a government or a company or a famous person. It was from a man named Danny Murphy who lived in Chicago. The message was simple. "I heard you need someone for that fight. I'll do it." At first, everyone thought it was a joke. Danny Murphy was 52 years old. He had worked construction for 30 years, building everything from small houses to huge skyscrapers. He had never been in the military. He had never competed in sports at a high level. He was just a regular guy who fixed things and built things and went home to his small apartment every night. But when the officials called him, Danny was serious. "Someone has to go," he said over the phone. "Might as well be me. I'm not married, no kids. If something happens to me, not many people will miss me." That was not true, of course. Danny's co-workers at the construction site would miss him a lot. He was the guy who always knew how to fix broken equipment. He was the one who could look at a building plan and spot problems that everyone else missed. He was the one who brought coffee for the whole crew when the weather was bad. The space transport ship arrived at Kepler's Rest right on time. The station was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. Ships from hundreds of different worlds were docked there, and creatures that looked like they came from dreams and nightmares walked through the corridors together. A crowd had gathered at the main docking bay. Word had spread that the human champion was arriving, and everyone wanted to see what Earth had sent to face the mighty Saurians. Reporters from dozens of species pointed their cameras and sensors at the ship's exit ramp. Captain Siktar stood at the front of the Saurian group, his green scales polished to a bright shine. Next to him were 5 other Saurian warriors, all of them huge and covered in scars from old battles. They expected to see a giant human in armor, or maybe someone with cybernetic parts, or at least a person who looked like they could break things with their bare hands. The ramp lowered with a soft hiss. Everyone leaned forward to get a better look. Danny Murphy walked out carrying a worn canvas bag and a metal thermos. He was wearing old blue jeans and a flannel shirt. His work boots were scuffed and comfortable. His hair was gray at the sides, and he had the kind of tan that came from working outside for many years. He looked around at all the alien faces, staring at him, and gave a small wave. The silence lasted for about 10 seconds. Then Captain Siktar made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a growl. "This is a joke," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "The humans mock us by sending this old worker instead of a warrior." Danny set down his bag and looked up at the tall Saurian. "I'm not mocking anyone," he said quietly. I'm just here to do a job. A job? Siktar's tail lashed behind him, showing his anger. This is sacred combat. This is about honor and strength and the right to sit among the greatest species in the galaxy. Okay, Danny said. He picked up his bag again. Where am I supposed to go? A small blue alien who worked for the station hurried forward. Mr. Murphy, we have prepared quarters for you. The combat is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Would you like to see the arena first? Most champions spend hours studying the layout and planning their strategy. Danny nodded. That sounds good. Can I get some coffee somewhere? It was a long trip. As they walked through the station corridors, word spread quickly. The human champion was not what anyone had expected. Betting pools changed their odds. Some species started wondering if this was some kind of trick. Maybe the real champion was still coming. Maybe this was just a decoy. But Danny Murphy was exactly what he appeared to be. A man who had spent his life building things and fixing things and figuring out how things worked. He had volunteered not because he thought he could win, but because someone had to try. The arena was in the center of Kepler's Rest, a massive sphere that could be seen from anywhere on the station. Danny stood at the entrance and looked up at it for a long time. The blue alien guide explained how the combat worked. The arena could change its gravity, temperature, and layout during the fight. There were weapons hidden throughout it, and automated systems that would attack both fighters equally. Most champions study recordings of previous battles, the guide said. There are training programs that can help you prepare for different scenarios. Danny walked into the empty arena and stood in the middle of the smooth floor. He closed his eyes and just listened. The air moved in patterns through the vents. Machinery hummed behind the walls. Metal supports creaked under the weight of the massive structure. How long can I stay here? He asked. As long as you like. The arena is yours until the combat begins. Danny sat down cross-legged on the floor and opened his thermos. The smell of coffee mixed with the recycled air of the space station. Around him, the great arena waited silently. He had 18 hours to figure out how to stay alive against the most dangerous warrior in the galaxy. Danny Murphy spent the entire night in the arena. When the station crew arrived in the morning to prepare for the combat, they found him still sitting in the same spot. But his thermos was empty, and he had a small notebook in his hand. He had been writing things down all night. Sir, you should eat something before the fight, said the blue alien guide. And perhaps you would like to select weapons? We have plasma rifles, energy swords, force shields, and combat armor available. Danny stood up slowly, his joints stiff from sitting so long. No thanks on the weapons, but I could use some more coffee if you have any. The guide looked confused. Are you certain about the weapons? High Commander Vrexthal will be fully armed. He has bio-enhanced claws that can cut through steel, and his scales are harder than most armor. I'm sure, Danny said, stretching his back. Can you tell me about the arena's power systems and who built this place? By noon, the arena was surrounded by thousands of spectators. Every species in the galaxy seemed to have representatives there. The Saurians filled an entire section, their scales gleaming as they waited to watch their champion destroy the human. Betting was still heavily in favor of Vrexthal, with most odds saying the fight would be over in less than 5 minutes. Katie Rodriguez sat in the human section with the other Earth representatives. Her hands were shaking as she watched Danny walk onto the arena floor. He still wore his work clothes and carried nothing but his empty thermos. She wanted to call out to him, to wish him luck, but the rules said no communication once the combat began. High Commander Vrexthal entered from the opposite side of the arena. He was a sight that made even other Saurians step back. His bronze scales had been polished until they reflected the lights like mirrors. His claws had been sharpened to razor points. Bio-enhancements had made him faster and stronger than any natural Saurian. Scars covered his arms and chest, proof of 17 previous combat victories. He looked across the arena at Danny and shook his head. Human, it is not too late to yield. I take no pleasure in killing those who cannot defend themselves. Danny tested his footing on the smooth arena floor. I appreciate that, but I came here to do a job, so I guess we should get started. The arena master, a tall alien with 4 arms, raised the ceremonial staff. Combat will begin when the arena systems activate. Both fighters will face equal challenges from the automated defenses. Victory goes to the last being standing. May honor guide your actions. The staff came down with a loud clang. Everything happened at once. The lights dimmed, and then flashed bright colors. The floor began to move in sections, rising and falling, like waves on an ocean. Gravity shifted in different parts of the arena, making some areas feel heavy and others light. Hidden panels opened in the walls and ceiling, revealing automated turrets that began searching for targets. Most champions would have immediately looked for weapons or tried to attack their opponent. Vrexthal did exactly that, launching himself forward with incredible speed, his claws extended to tear Danny apart. But Danny was not where he had been a second before. The human had moved 3 steps to the left, putting himself behind a section of floor that had risen up like a wall. Vrexthal's claws scraped against metal instead of flesh. Interesting, Danny said as if he was examining a building foundation. The floor sections move in a pattern. Every 43 seconds they reset to the starting position. Vrexthal spun around, confused. The human should have been running, in panic or trying to find a weapon. Instead, he was talking about patterns like he was discussing the weather. The automated turrets began firing plasma bolts at both fighters. Most combatants would dodge frantically or look for cover. Vrexthal rolled behind a barrier that had emerged from the floor. When he looked around the edge, he expected to see Danny diving for safety. Instead, Danny was walking calmly between the turrets. The plasma bolts missed him by inches, but he did not seem worried. He paused next to one of the weapons and looked at it closely. Motion sensors, he said to himself, loud enough for the microphones to pick up. But they're tracking. Heat signatures too. And they have a 2-second delay between target acquisition and firing. Vrexthal charged again, using his enhanced speed to close the distance. This time Danny stepped aside at the last possible moment, but he also did something else. As the Saurian rushed past, Danny reached out and touched something on the wall. Section of the floor that had been rising suddenly stopped and reversed direction. Vrexthal, expecting solid ground for his next jump, found himself stumbling as the surface dropped away beneath his feet. "How did you do that?" Vrexthal demanded, regaining his balance. Danny was examining a control panel that had been hidden behind a moving wall section. Every system has manual overrides, safety regulations. Someone has to be able to shut things down if there's an emergency. The Saurian stared at him. "You're not fighting. You're treating this like work." "Well, yeah," Danny said. He ducked as another plasma bolt flew overhead, but he timed it perfectly, like he knew exactly when it would fire. "This is just a really complicated machine, and I've been working with machines my whole life." Vrexthal felt something he had never experienced in combat before. Confusion. This human was not behaving like any warrior he had ever faced. There was no anger, no fear, no desperate struggle for survival. Danny Murphy was treating the most important combat in the galaxy like he was troubleshooting a broken elevator. The arena systems continued to change around them. Gravity shifted again, making the ceiling feel like the floor in some areas. New weapons emerged from hidden compartments. Environmental hazards activated, creating areas of extreme heat and cold. But Danny seemed to understand it all. He moved through the chaos like he had built the place himself, always knowing where to step, when to duck, which controls to touch to make things work in his favor. Vrexthal began to realize that his strength and speed meant nothing if he could not catch his opponent. And catching Danny Murphy was proving to be much harder than anyone had expected. 2 hours had passed since the combat began. In the spectator sections, aliens who had expected a quick fight were now leaning forward in their seats, trying to understand what they were watching. This was unlike any arena combat in the history of the Galactic Council. Vrexthal was breathing heavily. His bio-enhanced muscles were designed for quick, powerful attacks, not for a long chase through a constantly changing maze. Sweat dripped from his bronze scales as he crouched behind a barrier, watching Danny Murphy do something that made no sense. The human was sitting cross-legged next to a control panel, holding 2 wires in his hands. He had somehow opened the panel without tools just by understanding how the latches worked. Now he was studying the circuits inside like he was reading a book. The power distribution is interesting, Danny said, speaking to himself but loud enough for the arena microphones to hear. They use a triple redundancy system, very safe, but if you reroute the secondary feeds through the tertiary backup, you can create a dead zone where the automated systems won't work. He connected the two wires. Immediately, a section of the arena went quiet. The turrets stopped moving, the floor sections stopped shifting, and even the gravity returned to normal in that area. Vrexthal could not believe what he was seeing. That's impossible. The arena systems are designed to prevent tampering. Danny looked up at him. They're designed to prevent someone from breaking them or turning them into weapons. But they're not designed to stop someone from understanding how they work. Every safety system has to have manual overrides. That's just basic engineering. The Saurian champion felt anger rising in his chest. This was supposed to be a test of combat skill, not a lesson in machine repair. He charged forward. Again, his claws extended, determined to end this strange fight once and for all. But Danny was already moving. He had been watching Vrexthal's attack patterns for 2 hours, and he understood them now. The Saurian always favored his right side because of an old injury. He always attacked in straight lines because his enhanced muscles were built for speed, not agility. And he always paused for exactly half a second after each failed attack to reassess his target. Danny used that half-second pause to slip past Vrexthal and touch another control panel. This time, a section of the floor raised up, between them creating a temporary wall. You know, Danny said from the other side of the barrier, this arena is really well designed. Whoever built it understood that combat isn't just about strength. It's about adapting to changing conditions. Vrexthal smashed his claws against the barrier, leaving deep scratches in the metal. Stop running and fight me. I'm not running, Danny replied. The barrier began to lower again as the arena systems reset. I'm learning. This whole place is like a three-dimensional puzzle, and every piece affects every other piece. As the barrier disappeared, Danny was holding what looked like a small tool he had found in a maintenance compartment. He used it to adjust something on a nearby wall panel, and suddenly the gravity in Vrexthal's area became much heavier. The Saurian warrior, who had been preparing to leap forward, found himself struggling to lift his own weight. His bio-enhanced muscles, already tired from hours of fighting, strained against the increased gravity. How are you doing this? Vrexthal demanded, his voice showing frustration for the first time. Danny walked over to another panel, moving easily, through the normal gravity zone he had created for himself. Same way I figure out any job site. You watch, you listen, you understand how all the parts work together. Then you make adjustments. He paused and looked directly at the Saurian champion. You know, in construction, we have a saying, the strongest building isn't the one with the thickest walls. It's the one that bends with the wind instead of trying to fight it. Captain Siktar stood up in the Saurian viewing section, his green scales rippling with emotion. This is not honorable combat. The human is using tricks and deception. But High Commander Vrexthal, still struggling against the heavy gravity, was beginning to understand something different. This human was not using tricks. He was using knowledge. Danny Murphy understood the arena better than anyone who had ever fought in it, because he approached it not as an enemy to defeat, but as a system to comprehend. Danny made another adjustment to the controls, and the gravity around Vrexthal returned to normal. The Saurian could move freely again, but he hesitated. Every time he had attacked, the human had been ready. Every trap he had tried to use had been turned against him. It was like fighting someone who could see the future. I don't understand, Vrexthal said, his voice quieter now. What kind of warrior are you? Danny sat down on a piece of raised flooring and opened his thermos. It was still empty, but the familiar action seemed to comfort him. I'm not a warrior at all. I'm just a guy who builds things for a living. He looked around the arena, which had become still and quiet in response to his adjustments to the control systems. You want to know the truth? I've spent 30 years working construction. Every day I go to job sites where one mistake can kill someone, where you have to understand electricity, hydraulics, structural engineering, safety systems, and a dozen other things just to make it through the day without anyone getting hurt. Danny stood up and walked toward Vrexthal, who tensed for another attack. But the human stopped several feet away and sat down again. "This arena is just another job site," Danny continued. "A really complicated one, but still just a place where you have to understand how things work if you want to survive. The difference is you've been trying to fight it. I've been trying to work with it." Vrexthal stared at this strange human who had turned the most important combat of his life into a casual conversation. For the first time in 17 victories, the great Saurian champion was not sure what to do next. Around them, the arena hummed quietly, waiting for the next move in a game that neither fighter was playing by the expected rules. 4 hours had passed since the combat began. High Commander Vrexthal sat on the arena floor, his bronze scales dull with exhaustion. His bio-enhanced body was designed for short, powerful fights, not for this endless puzzle that the human had turned their battle into. Danny Murphy sat 20 feet away, still wearing his work clothes, still looking like he was just taking a break on a construction site. Between them, the arena had become something new. The constant shifting and changing had stopped. The automated turrets were silent. Even the gravity felt normal and steady. "I don't understand," Vrexthal said, his voice tired. "How did you do this?" Danny gestured around them at the quiet arena. "I didn't do anything special. I just paid attention to how things work. Every system has patterns. Every machine has rules. Once you understand the rules, you can work with them instead of against them." He pulled out his small notebook and showed it to the Saurian. The pages were covered with drawings and notes about power flows, timing sequences, and control pathways. "I spent all night learning this place, not trying to beat it, just trying to understand it." Vrexthal looked at the notebook, then at the human who had somehow made the most dangerous arena in the galaxy as peaceful as a library. "You planned this. You knew you could not defeat me in direct combat, so you found another way." "No," Danny said, shaking his head. "I didn't plan anything. I just did what I always do when I'm faced with something complicated. I tried to figure out how it works." The Saurian champion struggled to his feet. His muscles ached, and his enhanced reflexes were slow from hours of chasing an opponent who was always one step ahead, but his pride was hurt worse than his body. "This is not how combat is supposed to work," he said. "There should be honor in the struggle, glory in victory. Not this puzzle solving." Danny stood up too, moving easily while Vrexthal struggled. "Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you've been thinking about this all wrong." He walked over to a section of the arena wall and pointed to some markings there. "You see these symbols? They're maintenance codes. Instructions for the people who service this place. This whole arena is designed to be dangerous but fair. It's not supposed to kill people, it's supposed to test them." Danny turned back to Vrexthal. "But you've been using it like a weapon, trying to hurt people instead of trying to understand what it's really for." The great Saurian warrior felt something crack inside his chest, and it was not a physical injury. For 17 fights he had dominated this arena through strength and speed and the desire to prove his superiority. He had never once wondered what the arena itself was trying to teach. "I have won 17 combats," Vrexthal said, but his voice sounded hollow. "I am the greatest champion in Saurian history." "And how many of those opponents did you learn from?" Danny asked gently. "How many of them taught you something new about yourself or about fighting, or about what it means to be strong?" Vrexthal could not answer because the truth was uncomfortable. He had won every fight the same way, by being faster and stronger and more vicious than his enemies. He had never needed to learn anything new. Danny walked to the center of the arena and sat down cross-legged again. "You want to know what I learned today? I learned that the scariest thing in the galaxy isn't someone who wants to hurt you. It's someone who doesn't need to." He looked up at Vrexthal with calm eyes. "I could have turned off the life support in your section of the arena 3 hours ago. I could have made the gravity so heavy you couldn't move. I could have done a dozen things that would have ended this fight. But I didn't, because that's not what this is about." The Saurian champion stared at him. "Then what is it about?" "Respect," Danny said simply. "Your people wanted to know if humans deserve a seat on the council, not because we're the strongest or the fastest or the most dangerous, but because we might have something useful to contribute." He stood up and walked toward Vrexthal, who tensed for a final attack. But Danny stopped just out of reach and held out his empty thermos. You want some coffee? I know it's empty, but sharing a drink is how humans show respect to someone they've been working with. Vrexthal looked at the offered thermos, then at the human's face. There was no mockery there, no sense of victory or superiority. Just a tired man offering to share what little he had with someone he considered an equal. Slowly, the great Saurian champion reached out and took the thermos. He tilted it to his lips, pretending to drink from the empty container. It was a strange ritual, but somehow it felt important. I yield, Vrexthal said quietly. The words echoed through the silent arena and reached the thousands of spectators who had been watching in confusion for hours. In the Saurian section, Captain Siktar rose to his feet in shock. Commander, you cannot yield. The honor of our people, Vrexthal interrupted, his voice carrying clearly through the arena, is not threatened by recognizing wisdom when we see it. He looked around at his fellow Saurians, then at the representatives of dozens of other species. For 3,000 years, we have believed that strength comes from the ability to defeat others. This human has shown us a different kind of strength. The strength to understand instead of destroy, to build instead of tear down, to find solutions that help everyone instead of just winning for yourself. Danny Murphy, the construction worker from Chicago, walked slowly toward the exit of the arena. He paused at the doorway and looked back at Vrexthal. Thanks for the fight, he said. I learned a lot too. As Danny left the arena, the spectators sat in stunned silence. No one was sure what they had just witnessed, but everyone understood that something important had changed. Humanity had earned their seat on the Galactic Council not through violence, but through the simple act of proving that there were other ways to be strong. Katie Rodriguez met Danny at the arena exit, tears in her eyes. How did you know? She asked. How did you know you could do that? Danny shrugged and checked his watch. I didn't know. I just figured that if someone built something, there had to be a reason for it. And if I could understand the reason, maybe I could work with it instead of against it. He looked back toward the arena, where Vrexthal was still standing in the center, staring at the empty thermos in his hands. Besides, Danny added, every good construction job teaches you the same thing. The strongest foundation is the one that supports everyone, not just yourself. The proud Lizardkind had learned that strength was not always about winning. Sometimes it was about knowing when you had already lost, and finding the wisdom to admit it.